Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Megan Sanchez, and I am the host of Breaking Through Burnout. I am very excited today to be joined by Mim Senft. Welcome, Mim.
Very nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So Mim has 20 years of corporate experience in benefits design, wellness program strategy, and implementation. She is the CEO of Motivity Partnerships and is a worksite wellness specialist. She's the co-founder of Global Women for Wellbeing and on the board of directors for National Wellness Institute. So we are very excited to have Mim here today. I know Mim as a fierce advocate for many men and women to combat burnout and build smarter strategies for working and living, both personal and professional experiences. So again, Mim, psyched to have you here today.
And I am psyched to be here.
So. I think that amidst a lot of things, even when this program airs, amidst a lot of things that are going on in our culture right now, it is the perfect time to talk about coming together as community and taking care of each other. So Mim, you have a history beginning in benefits and then moving into corporate wellness, larger programs, and then started your own initiative with Motivity Partnerships. So I'd just love to hear and share with everybody who's listening a little bit about your journey and your evolution and where your interest is shifted and how you got here today.
Happy to share. Benefits is usually not anybody that I know that goes into benefits or benefits design didn't plan on becoming a benefits design person. It's not one of those things as a little kid, you're like, I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to be a fireman. I'm going to be a benefits designer, for corporations. And the way that I morphed into that role, I'd actually been working in different finance firms. Prior to moving to New York, I'd actually been at Lehigh University and doing corporate liaison work for a chemical engineering think tank. And so very strange kind of journey, but was tapped to run a benefits team for a brokerage firm. And they said, well, we'll get you your license. We'll get you trained. I've always had a deep passion for health and well-being. Grew up in a scientist household. My dad was a neurophysiologist and researcher. So, we were very healthy and active. So it's always kind of been a part of my personal life. Coming into benefits and looking at how organizations were having to deal with very high costs around benefits. It's usually the second biggest spend for an organization. First is salary and then is benefits. And so it was really eye-opening for me to get to know these companies, talk to their leaders, help them with their medical, their dental, their LTD, STD, like all the different components of, what you put together, as a package. Yeah. And for me, I got very curious. You're looking at these companies, and this was, quite a while ago, but these huge jumps in cost. Like you see these smaller companies trying to absorb like a 15% jump in their benefit spend, or their 20% jump in their benefit spend. And certainly their profit margins weren't going up, to cover those costs.
Sure.
And so you heard the pain from these leaders. I think that there's some people that, they don't care and they're very cavalier about this. But my experience was that most of these leaders were struggling. How do we keep our company, moving forward? How do we give really good benefits? But, how do we absorb these costs? Like, what are we going to do here? So again, when you look at benefits, particularly medical benefits, those numbers are lagging indicators.
Okay.
So what that means is that person, yes, if you broke a leg, that happened a few days ago.
Yes,
right?
Sure.
But the really expensive stuff, the folks that are pre-diabetic or diabetic, the folks that are getting cancer, all of these things, that's a cumulative over time. And so the question for me became, where's the prevention side like we do for safety?
Sure.
If you walk into a manufacturing environment, every safety committee, you see those big signs on the wall, we haven't had an accident in 23 days or, whatever it is. Like there's a real focus on preventing issues. Health, for the most part, and particularly in the US, is very much focused on fixing sick people.
Right.
With not enough emphasis on how do we prevent illness and not just physical illness, but mental illness. And what are the safety nets that we can put in place? So there's been a lot of discussion. I should say that I am no longer on the National Wellness Institute board, but I was, and I am a member. And
Great.
yeah,
Fair enough. I think still
but,
quite admirable.
well, thank you. But I'm also involved with Global Wellness Institute and Hero Health and
Yeah.
Wellness Council of America. And so I am kind of obsessive about like what data is out there, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I know for some people, they think that worksite wellness is fairly new. But National Wellness Institute came out with a holistic model back in 1979 that,
wow.
yeah. And they were called a little crazy at the time for doing it,
Sure.
but it included things like things that we're talking about right now: financial well-being, connection to purpose. And it's very interesting to me how what was once thought of as something kind of woohoo and out there as now being much more mainstream. I still think that there is a very big disconnect between the different pieces of health and well-being. And so that, through my journey of looking at benefits in this, getting very curious about why are we not fixing this? What's going on? What's available in the marketplace? And that sent me down the path, a couple different paths. One is what research is out there, what is credible research. So is it been duplicated in more than one place? Who did the research? What did they find out? And then looking at a lot of these technologies, apps, programs. For those of you out there that don't know this, some of these wellness platforms have been in the marketplace for 25 years.
Wow.
So they're not new.
Right.
They've morphed, they've changed, they've added. And I'm not anti-technology. I think that if you do a good job of vetting, and to be honest with you, most companies just don't have the time to do that. I mean, you're not going to you're not going to spend the next 5 years looking at 20 platforms. You need an answer now. And, so I think this is the other disconnect, is that there are organizations that have said, okay, we need to do something. Like, we recognize the pain points, not just from a benefit spend perspective, but specifically what we're talking about today, burnout.
Right.
The mental health and well-being piece of this, the increased stress levels. We know it's there, but we just don't know what to do about it.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. I was working with a group. It was a think tank, and we were talking about, so it was all these great CEOs and researchers and all of us, and, it was just some of my favorite stuff to do, and sharing research and, and what's worked, what hasn't worked. And through the discussion, one of the CEOs came up to me and said, look, I'm growing, I'm burning my people out. I love my people. I just don't know what to do.
Right.
And, again, it's like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about everything that you're doing right now to support your people, everything from how you're recruiting, onboarding, HR policies, benefits design, leadership training. What is your culture like? Are they, what is it? Is it more of the salesy, like we're out there, you've got the A personalities? Are you mostly A personalities? Is it a mix? Old, young? Are you in one place? What's the, there are different geographies that we need to think through, all of this stuff. So it's always fun to work with a leader that truly gets it. Like, you can hand them, here's Harvard Business Review, here's Gallup data, here's, this piece, and this is how we're going to incorporate it using your benefits and your pieces, and then really getting to know that culture. So I think what happens in a lot of organizations, as I did not start out, like when I moved from benefits to more of the wellness design, I was like, oh, let's put in a platform and let's do biometric screenings, and we're going to do a health assessment, and
Sure.
a lot of the stuff, right, that most companies do. And again, each of those are tools in your toolbox, but individually, there is no science, there really isn't, that shows that the vast majority of people that go through a biometric screening ever change their behavior. And I'd like you to, so I just ask everybody to think about this for a minute. When you do your trainings once a year, whatever it is, like if you're in a finance firm, you're going to do, right? So you go through your hour-long training and you do it, and hey, great, it's done. I'm done now, and I don't have to think about it. I'm betting if you asked most people 3 months later, so what was in that training? And that was a full hour. So biometric screenings, you get your biometric screening and you sit down with a health coach, typically for 5 to 7 minutes. I think that's really it.
Yeah.
And so clearly there are cases where there's been somebody with super high blood pressure, they get them to a hospital, and, clearly that's a benefit. But if you think of the spend that you're doing per person, and it's really only helping 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4% of all those people, I would ask you to reconsider what you're doing with your budget.
And it's so interesting. It's one of the first things you and I talked about when we met, was that information simply won't equate to action. Doing a biometric screening and then walking away in 5 minutes, it's a no-brainer. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's a non-starter, really. So much of what you said is is fascinating, of course, to everybody listening. When we talk about leaders, right, and working from the top down, do you find that in going into these organizations, is it often people approaching you and they're curious because they're seeing this loss within their business, or are you able to present science and data and make that case and help people see that value, or is it a mix of both? What's out there? What do you see in terms of trends?
So I think that's a really good question. I think there are 2 types of leadership that are focusing on, and I go beyond wellness. It's really about, how do I make my workforce thrive, not just be physically healthy? What are all the components that are going to give me a competitive edge, that are going to make me an employer of choice, and that is going to keep me moving forward through the next 10 years, where we're going to have more change. Innovation is going to happen faster. We are going to have other crises that are going to come up. So you have that forward-thinking kind of leader that is saying, maybe they've had a wellness program and they're going, this isn't working. We're spending all this money. It's been a fluffy, nice to have on the side, but clearly we're missing something here. We're spending all this money and not getting a return on investment. Now, I know that there are wellness people that are going to yell at me right now, but I come from the business world, and any for-profit business is not going to invest, their leadership is not going to invest time and money into something where they don't truly believe they're going to get a return. So here's an example of that, very specific.
Sure.
Weight loss programs, and I'm not going to mention any names.
Fair enough.
Right. But so many corporations have had weight loss challenges. They've had, organizations come in. The data tells us that more than 90% of those people will gain their weight back and more within 2 years.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you as an organization have just spent time and money. You've advertised it. You've brought people in. You've done this. And you have a less than 10% chance of success for that program. And my question to business leaders, would you do that? Seriously, somebody comes in and says, hey, we've got this great data security program for you, but it really has less than a 10% chance of success. But you want to buy into this, don't you? Who's going to do that?
What an interesting comparison. Sure, absolutely. Makes sense.
It's really looking at all the pieces of the puzzle. So again, I'm not anti-technology. I've seen companies use platforms, apps, a combination of things, training, internal training, but they build a real strategy, just like you do for any other business plan.
Yeah.
So it's understanding, and I always call this kind of like architecture for culture.
I love that.
Because if you're going to build a house, your architect is going to say, okay, is it in the woods? Is it on a mountain? Is it by the beach? Because you're going to have foundational things that are going to be different. All right, what do you want? Do you want 2-story? Do you want this? Like, what is it? So that's kind of the, if you're translating that into how you're going to change your culture, it's doing that assessment first. So there are foundational pieces that we know. There's behavioral economics. There's just basic things that we know have to be built into that. But you got to do your due diligence about what is it that you as an organization want to do? What are your goals for this? Where are you going for this? Are we going to start small, but something that you want to build onto?
Sure.
And I think the other big piece, more than any of this, is finding out what the biggest pain points are for your organization at all levels. So you as a leader might say, benefit spend, this is crazy, we can't afford this. Oh my gosh, if we get another 15% jump, what are we going to do here? Plus, and then if you add on to that, I've got an aging workforce. What do I have to think about through that lens?
Absolutely.
Or maybe it's all millennials, and now I've got to think about fertility costs. So again, that's why you want to do your due diligence and really think this through. And what you think as a leader may be a very different pain point than your frontlines people.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. And then, so it's not just, as if we are talking top down, that's great, but so much of your information and your resources and then your understanding is coming from the greater, like the culture, all the people who are experiencing. I mean, it's a tailor to fit understanding of what's happening with people.
You have to customize it to your culture and build on your strengths.
Yes.
So it's so interesting to me. You've run, look, if you're a leader, who male, female, your team, clearly you're in business. Clearly you've been running a business. Yay. You've got strengths there that you can build on.
Sure.
So it's not about, and I've seen this happen all the time. You've got to do this and here's the weakness and here's that. Yes, you need to do a gap analysis, but it's so important to say, here are all the levers that you are not using right now that you have. So that's why this deep dive into your benefits design, like what are the key pieces in here that you may be underutilizing that you're already paying for?
Yeah.
That we can incorporate into this piece. And I think in the world that we're in right now, I am so adamant now about understanding why you need health and well-being built into your crisis management plan.
Sure.
This will, unfortunately, I hope it doesn't happen, but as somebody who's been through 9/11 personally in New York City, as somebody who, went through Sandy, and now we're dealing with this virus. I mean, they're all different versions of crisis within your organization. I think the other thing is to go beyond where you normally think of as the people that are going to handle this. So there's a real opportunity to build consensus between your facilities managers, your property managers, because you're protecting the people in the building. So there is a health and well-being component to all of this.
Absolutely.
Your benefits people, your leadership training, what are all the components that you can build into that to protect the people that are protecting your organization? And I think right now, this just shows you how important that really is.
It is. Like, there couldn't be a more key moment to understand how people respond to crisis when they're not, as you said earlier, not in a good place already. This is so interesting, man. When I listen to you talk, there's such a human side, right? A human side of sitting down with someone and being like, tell me your pain points. And then there's such a great backbone side, right? That's like, well, show me the research, show me the data so I can make sure I merge these two. In my mind, the best of both worlds and the most powerful thing you can do. But I'm curious, like, what exactly is happening when you go into these organizations? And of course now we know it's different for everybody, right? But like, are you talking about the 40-hour work week? Are you talking about, you know what I mean? Like, it's
good question.
I hear these big responses,
right.
And I'm like, but really? And this is what people say to me as a coach all the time. I talk about mindset and about taking care of your physicality and all these things. And they're like, but really, what do I do? Right? Like, what do you see in
right.
trends in that way?
So I think that's really important. So there are two pieces to the puzzle in my mind.
Yeah.
There is teaching people self-care through, and again, I'll go back to, because again, everybody's got this top of mind.
Sure.
So through this crisis situation, are you checking in with yourself? Does your culture allow you to feel like you can express, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed out, I need help, and not, well, just tough through it, and we still have a lot of that. So that happens not just here, it happens when you go through pushing a new innovation out the door, and, or bringing in the big client, and we're all hands on deck to get this merger done or whatever it is. Here's the science behind this. We know scientifically that people that are overstressed, overtired, disconnected, not feeling like they're being heard, will make bad decisions. You are hurting your bottom line. And we constantly make this analogy to the sports world. We have teams. We want to be like that winning team, right? All the time I hear this.
Yeah.
So let's think about it through that lens. Winning teams have coaches.
Yeah. Sure.
And they don't just have one coach. They have coaches in different, that have different specialities, right? So this one's going to worry about the strength training. You may have multiple elite athletes, translate leaders, but what this leader needs to make them at their best and really thrive and be the leader you need them to be, maybe slightly different than what this leader needs. So that to me is where the leadership, health, and well-being piece starts to merge, and why you need that.
Yeah.
We are social beings. So as much as we might want to get people to change, I use this analogy all the time too. So somebody decides, I don't want to drink anymore. Like I've decided I'm not going to drink alcoholic beverages. But if they are forced to go into a bar every day and sit at a table by themselves while all their friends are standing up at the bar drinking, what's going to happen?
Right.
And so this gets to the social component of what happens in your organization. We keep doing wellness as if it's a one-off thing instead of looking at what are we doing? Who are the we in this organization? And so the organizations that have been most successful in moving towards a more thriving culture get that component of it. And so it's about, so it's the minutia of our leaders with the best of intentions, because this is when they have time doing emails on a Sunday night, right?
Sure.
And again, we've specifically, and it's not going to be the same. There's no one size fits all here, but this is what I mean about, let's talk about the biggest pain points and let's work on those. One company I walked into, we were going through the due diligence. They had several people at their corporate office that were going through cancer treatments, and their broker was not answering these people with their medical billing questions. Like they weren't getting back to them for 3, 4, 5 days. Now people are going to say, is that really like, well, how does that fit into your work? How stressful is that for that person who is already compromised? Their family, how are they going to show up when they are not getting answers? And so honestly, I said, we're going to stop. This is the first thing we're going to do. We're going to go get you another broker that can come in here, can be a partner to you. I will bring you 3. I don't care which one you pick, but they are vetted. They are vetted based on your culture. What I've gotten to know about you guys. I'm happy to sit on the call, and our team will do that, but it's your choice. But I will vet them for you and bring them, because this will wipe out everything else you do. Everybody knows that they have cancer. Everybody knows that they're already going above and beyond by coming in and trying to work and do this. And so if they don't feel like you as a leader are addressing that, that's a problem. It starts to wear away the safety component in your organization. So that's an example. A flip side, I had a client that said, we want to put in a plant wall, a biophilia wall. Like they were very into design. They said, we know this is good. I said, great. That's so exciting. So I'm going to bring in my spa network, which is really kind of outside the box. But I said, you don't want just anybody, you're going to spend money on this. So let's please make sure that what you're putting in, the right plants for the where you are in the country, that you have a plan about how it's going to be taken care of. We know that they're vetted quality people to do this. We've done work on drinking culture. So women metabolize alcohol at a different rate than men. I think most people know that by now. So you think about these young women that join a team, and if they're on a sales team and they want to keep up, right? This is part of the culture. We go out, we all drink together. And it's not bad intention. Like they celebrate. This is how we celebrate. We work hard, we play hard. You've heard this a million times. And so it took a lot of conversation around a number of different components to this. First, there's the health issue. Second, if this is a company sanctioned event and that person gets jumped in a parking lot, you're now liable potentially. So now we're talking about a lawsuit. We talked to the CFO about, well, how much money are you actually spending on all of these? And give them, some kind of thing. And then slowly but surely, we worked with everybody within their culture, this is where the leadership training comes in, brought them into the conversation. Let's talk about this. Well, why do we do this? But we want to celebrate. Well, how do we want to celebrate? How do we want to get this out there? How do we then say we're going to take something away, which everybody's going to see it that way. So we're going to pay for one drink at these events. We all want to celebrate, but we also want to make people who don't drink feel comfortable. So we don't want to be sitting there doing shots at the bar. And because we've saved money here, we're going to put in this extra vacation benefit. So you can imagine, so it's strategy, and that starts to address this other side of the fence where we were talking about burnout and making sure people are taking a real recovery time, right? You need real recovery time to come back and be at your best. If you're in a highly stressful job, if you never turn off, it goes back to anybody who's done weightlifting. Like you will stress your muscles to the very end, right? And you're shaking and you're sweating and all that stuff. You don't do the same thing the next day. You don't stress the same muscles because your muscle needs to recover so that you get stronger. That actually is true for your brain.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's trying to get leaders to understand some of these things. And that's why it's not just this health and well-being program. That's why it starts to bleed into leaders. How are you as a leader leading? Are you leading as a healthy leader? And what does that mean for you?
Yes, Mim, we are gonna bounce there actually to the idea of a healthy leader. But before we do, just what you said, I mean, it is true to your organization, the idea of understanding partnerships and seeing that, yes, there has been a good intention in the past, but it sounds like that system or that mechanism is totally outdated. And so you're right, understanding, hey, there was a good thing there, but it's not working anymore. Which is so much, it's so approachable as opposed to coming into an organization being like, we're totally going to take over everything and overhaul you. Like you said earlier, it's like, no, we see the good parts. We see what you're doing well. We see what needs to be updated. I love that approach. It's a sound approach, and it feels, like I said, it feels more approachable. In the corporate environment, that's not always approachable.
And I think most leaders, when you really get to know them, and I know you know this,
Yeah.
they care. They want to care. They just don't know always how to do it in the right way. So
Absolutely.
one of the other things that I really encourage organizations to do, safe psychological environment is such a foundation for a healthy, thriving workforce. And that really comes down to how you're training your leaders, which goes to, do you, leader, actually know your own style? Are you honest with yourself about your own bias? We all have it. I know we don't want to admit it as much as we were just over in London, and yes, I got home safely, but one of the most profound conversations that I heard was from, it's a CFO, white male accounting background from Nest UK. That's one of their big pension plans. They have billions of dollars in their advisement. And so what they did is go through real quality bias training. And he shared at the event publicly, so I can say this, anybody into trouble, but I loved him getting up there and saying, look, I went through the bias training and I found out that, when it comes to ethnic background, I really, came out, was very happy to see that. But I have gender bias and I have a wife and 2 daughters. And it was really hard as a male leader who cares to have to own that. And to have to, talk to myself and being brave enough as a leader in my organization to publicly say, I need to work on this. And if we want to see real change, I've seen this happen with leaders talk about their mental health journey or caregiving. I lost my mother. And when you hear, and I'm going to be very honest about this, most organizations are still run by men. That's the numbers. So men have such an opportunity, men in leadership positions have such an opportunity to make meaningful change in their organization by opening up and sharing some of these stories. I've seen this happen over and over again. And I would just encourage all leaders, male, female, cross the gender arc, your personal story coupled with real data, to back it up and the new things that you're putting in, it's one of the best ways you can launch a new initiative. I'm getting out here because I went through this, or I saw this with my wife, or I saw this with my daughter, or whatever it is. And here's why we're doing this. It's not about, I'm making you do another thing, another check the box so you pay less for your premium. It's about and you're hearing it all over now, we are all in this together. Yeah. We as leaders are trying to support you. We heard you. And this is why when you do your due diligence, this is how all this stuff starts to, integrate. And then the last thing I'll say about that, all of that is good, but you must, in my estimation, figure out what you're going to measure. KPIs. These are businesses. And if you're going to put these things in, so the good news is, like the Breakers Palm Beach, I talk about them all the time, but it's a real life story. And they have, I think they have 2,300 employees, 5-star resort. And everybody goes, oh, well, they're not like us. I said, well, you got to remember, they've got 3rd shift workers that don't speak English and people out, cutting the lawns. And, they've got really quite a mix of workers. So they used to have almost 100% turnover on an annual basis. 100%. Now they're in hospitality, not unusual,
Sure.
but I think that's a measurable number. So here they are, fast forward 13, 14 years later, and they have 18% turnover.
Oh,
So if
wow.
you're
What
a
a
business
change.
person, it didn't happen overnight. And as Denise, I'm going to do something visual. It wasn't this.
Yeah.
It was this to get to here. And so this is the whole point about having a strategy, having a project plan, having KPIs. How does this really tie into your bottom line? The award that we gave out in London to Nest UK, the same CFO. Here's an example of this. So for them, they were focusing on gender balance and gender equity in top leadership positions. And a little over, I think it was about 2.5 years ago, they did their analysis, 20% of like the top, probably 3 or 4 layers, right? At 20% of those top positions were held by women. And they said, we're going to change that. So fast forward, they made a goal. They said, okay, we want to get to 30%. They're now over 40%.
Wow.
In less than 2.5 years. So change is entirely possible if you have the will and you're willing to measure. And they have beautiful stuff out there. We're going to be sharing that out. I've just asked them for their latest, because I think it's really helpful for businesses to say, this is actually how they're measuring it. And you may not want to do it exactly like this, but it's a lot stronger than just saying, I have a women's affinity group.
Sure.
But the same thing applies for wellness and well-being. It may be that you want to use Net Promoter Score, which has been very effective for some companies. And for those that don't know what Net Promoter Score is, that's a marketing term. So would you recommend this product, right, to my friends or family? You can ask internally in your employee surveys, would you recommend a friend or family member coming to work for this company? And the good news is it does kind of bump up against Gallup data, with one caveat. If you're in an organization where you do not have people, they don't believe that they can be honest, that number won't count. But if you can do it third party, if you can make sure that it is completely anonymous and they feel safe about answering in the way they truly would, that can give you a great starting point. And it's fairly simple to measure. And I will say that the companies that are not in good shape usually come out at about like 34%, people that will say yes. The best of the best are in the like 70 to 75% range. So just to give some people some idea of what that looks like.
Oh, man, it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me of this idea of creating awareness and then taking action and measuring, and seeing the change for yourself, for your organization in front of your own eyes. You can't dismiss the numbers. The numbers aren't going to lie, right? That's the box score. I want to make sure that everybody knows that when Mim refers to London, she was just there for an event for Global Women for Wellbeing, which I mentioned in the beginning. But their mission is to empower healthy leaders. And so as this conversation went there, I just want to make sure everyone knows that they can check Global Women for Wellbeing out. And it is not just for women. It is a partnership with men and women, as Mim said, probably one of the most powerful things about it. So Mim, this has been incredible. I am sure that there are a million thoughts running through heads right now about individuality, but also where people are working and their cultures and their organizations. So how can people find you? How can people reach you and follow you?
Great. They can certainly email me. I'm on LinkedIn, website, GW4W. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook. Call me. I do take phone calls, believe it or not, like the old fashioned way. And, we're really here to help. And it's not, you see me, but it's about the network as well. So it's kind of like a honeycomb kind of thing where we bring together the best, just like an architect, we'll bring in the different pieces of the puzzle. Yeah. And organizations, we are going to go through a lot in the next 10 years. I think I hope everybody understands that, because of the way work is changing, the way our world is changing. But building a culture where people can truly thrive, where everybody has voice, diversity and inclusion, health and well-being, all of these pieces, they will help you. They will help you and your teams be better creative problem solvers, better innovators. And those are the companies that are going to end up being the employers of choice. So, we want to cheer everybody on. And
Yes.
our greatest goal is to hold all those companies up that are making measurable difference to hopefully inspire other leaders to do the same.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mim. So in this email blast with Mim's amazing interview, you will have her contact information so that you can get in direct touch with her and continue this goodness. I will warn you, the first time Mim and I spoke, we blocked 30 minutes and it was an hour and a half. So if you choose to call Mim, be ready for that because there's always...
If you've got time constraints, we will keep it to the time.
Amazing. There's amazing conversation to be had with Mim. We're going to wrap up, Mim, but one last question. When do you feel most creative in your life?
Wow, that's a great question. I love to walk. I am lucky enough to live out in a place where I can walk by a lake in nature. And for me, when I'm stuck in a presentation, a talk, a particular piece of strategy that I'm working on, I find that if I can get out, and it doesn't even matter what the weather's like, it changes my viewpoint. So I call it kind of walking meditation. But for me, my best ideas, it's when my aha moments happen. And then the second piece would be the network. My network of trusted friends that inspire me and challenge me, and we challenge each other. And it's that human connection. So thank you for asking that question.
Absolutely. Thank you for such a thoughtful response. And thank you for spending your time with us today on Breaking Through Burnout.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everybody. And we will see you next time.